Hello, welcome into the CHGO Bears podcast presented by PointsBet. Use promo code CHGO when you sign up to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. What's up? My name's Adam Hogue alongside Nicholas Moriano. We got to watch actual football today at Halas Hall. Again, I shouldn't call it actual football, but there were footballs and there were football players and they were on grass and we got to watch it. And that's always refreshing, even if it was pretty damn cold over in Lake Forest.
Yeah, and I definitely underdressed as I was talking to you. While we're at that practice, Adam, like I didn't bring gloves, a hat. You were ready for the elements. I was not.
I will admit I dropped the ball on you a little bit. I should have told you that there was a good chance practice could be outside. You don't really know.
I figured it would be.
Yeah.
It would be, but I just the bomber jacket will be just fine for today, and I was sadly mistaken. So tomorrow I'll have a chance to redeem myself.
Now 40 is in Lake Forest. You might as well dress like it's 20, like in the 20s. So anyway, welcome in. I know there's been a lot of like buzz and reaction already today on Bears Twitter. So we're here. We moved the show today on purpose from 11 a.m. to 5 o'clock so that we could get you the reaction from Halas Hall with the first mini camp under Matt Eberflus. Justin Fields talked today. Travis Gibson on the defensive side, which originally I thought was weird. And then when you actually saw who was there from the defense, you're like, okay, I kind of understood why Travis Gibson was the guy who talked today. And so we'll get to all of that. There was some interesting movement on the offensive line. We've been talking about the offensive line all the time here on the CHGO Bears podcast. So we got to get to some of that stuff too. And, well, we might as well dive in, but hopefully you're following us on Twitter at Adam Hogue, at Nicholas Moriano. If you haven't already, hit the notification button on YouTube. So subscribe, hit the notifications. That way you kind of know when our schedule changes. Also, make sure you're following us on Twitter at CHGO_sports and _Bears, because we do put the schedule out there, and like the whole week schedule is on that Twitter account. So just to keep you guys updated, it's a good way to go about it. So anyway, why don't I kick it over to you, Nick? Like, what was your biggest observation from the day, whether it was from the press conferences or the practices?
I think it has to be just mechanically what Justin Fields was asked to do with Luke Getsy and how they're going to kind of switch up a little bit of the mechanics to fit what the timing and rhythm of the Bears offense is going to be in Luke Getsy's system, now having that left foot forward instead of the right, like he did with Matt Nagy. So that was definitely one of the big takeaways that I thought people were, once they saw that news, like, oh, that's what they're doing differently. But I mean, Adam, look, the offensive line shuffle, having the 2 tackles, Larry Borom now on the left side for now, and Tevin Jenkins on the right side, that right tackle position. But like Matt Eberflus said in his press conference, everything's fluid, and if they have to wait and figure that out until the first week of the season, they kind of have that approach and they're ready to do so. But I think when you look at like the Bears offense and all the question marks, like those are 2 things that are going to play into, well, how does this offense actually perform come this regular season? But I thought those are some of the takeaways from, I guess, the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, well, let's start with Fields. I do think the offensive line is a big deal, but we already got some comments in here kind of wondering about what that all means. And, I'll say this. The mechanical stuff matters, okay? And this can be like sort of downplayed, like, oh, just switching one foot's going to fix everything. And nobody's saying that. But I was happy to hear this because it just goes to show that there was at least something. We all know that there's something that could be tweaked, but just Luke Getsy coming in and being like, all right, you were doing it this way last year with your right foot forward. By the way, here's what's sort of funny too. I think the Bears are going to be in the shotgun less in this offense. We're going to see more under center, and maybe this isn't as big of a deal. But when you start talking about like the option game, read option, decisions being made, Justin Fields last year in his rookie year had his right foot forward first, which impacts your drop, okay, and your timing and rhythm, most importantly, of your throws, because regardless of which foot you step forward, your feet need to end up in the same spot when you throw the football. It affects your accuracy a lot. So you're minimizing kind of an extra step in there or you might be adding a step if you're trying to just get that rhythm and timing down with the wide receiver routes, but more likely you're shortening that time up. And we've talked a lot about timing with Justin Fields and getting rid of the ball quicker. I quickly looked at some of his college tape too, Nick, when I got home, just to check on this, to make sure like they weren't going back to something he did at Ohio State. The right foot did appear to be forward. I just looked at the Clemson game right at the end of his Ohio State career, and his right foot was forward in the shotgun. So this is a little bit of a change for him. And I could only assume that last year the coaching staff was like, all right, let's just keep it the way he had it in college, so we're not throwing too much at him here. So it's really nothing more than interesting. And a specific example we can look at. It's something that's going to be different and maybe help them. And I find it interesting.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And, Eberflus was asked about, what are some of the things that Justin Fields can work on? And he said that he has seen the footwork is actually improving. Now, he couldn't say whether or not that's, it's still too early on to say how much, but he did say it is going in the right direction. But yeah, if that's what it takes for this Bears offense to be in rhythm, because of the footwork being, timed up with the receivers' routes and the progressions that Justin Fields has to take, this is exactly the time where you start implementing that stuff in these voluntary mini camps. And I think it was just obviously Nick. I think it was only Nick Foles on the offense that was the only offensive player not there. And Justin Fields said he expected everybody to be at camp today, especially on the offensive side, and that seemed to be the case.
Yeah. And look, I certainly don't want to overreact to just one random practice with shorts on, with, by the way, no defense today. They split up the field. So defense was on one. You're going against a scout team, basically, that include half the players out there were coaches. So, can't put too much stock in the results. I did think Justin Fields was really accurate today, though. Like, a lot of the passes were right in the hands at the high point, like kind of where they're supposed to be in stride. So it was at least something I wrote down. Not making any grand conclusions, obviously. Tomorrow, it sounds like they'll at least get some 7-on-7, a little bit of team in there. And maybe that, because again, this all is about what happens when you're confused or what happens when you're rushed off your spot. So with no defense really out there, with no pass rush, you don't want to overreact, but things looked comfortable for Justin Fields today in his first day running a brand new offense with all new concepts. And they're trying to, the biggest part about this all, honestly, right now is just getting the offense installed.
Yeah. And Matt Eberflus talked about that. He's like, that Justin Fields looked comfortable and he looked like he was in command of this new offense. So he mentioned that in today's presser. So, it played out on the field on that first, voluntary practice, and we'll see if it kind of transitions into tomorrow where the defense will actually be involved. There'll be some 7-on-7, some little team activities, what Matt Eberflus was saying. So we'll see how that kind of translates and see if Justin Fields can build off of, a good start.
Anything else Justin said today while you were in there at Halas Hall that stood out to you?
Yeah, so he talked about what Andrew Janocko has kind of how he's been so far, just to this team. Is like positive vibe, detailed, and he just loves the game. And Adam, when I was just watching today, Andrew Janocko, literally after every single play, he has something to say to Justin Fields. So Justin Fields would do a bootleg and maybe not even throw the pass, but Andrew Janocko is there every single time. And I've read like things about him, like how detail oriented he is. Well, this is the first time I get to see him in action, and the guy is constantly going there. But that was something that Justin Fields also pointed out, just how detailed Janocko is. And, with this new offense being implemented, you can't skip anything. It's like you can't skip over that footwork that needs to be worked on now. That needs to be, just worked on at this point so that when it comes to the season, you're not overlooking anything. You've worked on it at this voluntary mini camp. But I thought that was, another takeaway that I had here. But I think, too, what Justin was saying, like he's still getting to know, like, Matt Eberflus. He's getting to know Ryan Poles just as people, and that's going to come obviously with time. But that's kind of what this period is for, getting to know your teammates, all the new people that are coming in, and that's what Justin Field mentioned in his presser day.
Well, for the timing to work with the footwork and all that, he needs protection in front of him. So, and I feel like nobody has talked more about and breaking down the possibilities of this Bears offensive line more than we have, despite understanding that there might be one or two, maybe even three more guys that get added to the equation here in the next couple of weeks with the draft and that extra wave of free agency that happens after the draft. Very interesting, though, today, the combination on the offensive line. Wasn't a shock to me, but it was almost like a relieving, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It was relieving. I was relieved to see what the combination was. It's what I thought it should be going into mini camp. And we've talked a lot about how with Olin too, a lot with Olin Kreutz about what the Bears should be doing with Tevin Jenkins. And like he's talked about a lot about how Olin hasn't really talked to anybody who thought Jenkins was a left tackle coming out of college. And so he's a right tackle today. And Larry Borum, Larry Borum's the one at left tackle. Now, one of the reasons why I like this is because it was a very small sample size. But I liked what I saw from Larry Borum. I've said this on the show a few times already. I liked what I saw from him on the left side. Now, Olin also seems to think that he might be better off long-term at going to guard. We'll see. But considering that this is what they have now, these are the guys they have on the roster at this moment, I think the chances of Jenkins having better long-term success at one position is at right tackle. And I'd like to at least see what Larry can show you at left tackle before you make a move to guard, which may be necessary depending on who they draft. Because the other thing we saw today was that hole at right guard is still there.
We definitely.
Sam Mustipher was at right guard, as some have pointed out on Twitter, instead of, I guess we would have thought maybe Dakota Dozier in that spot.
Maybe, yeah.
But so yeah.
And yeah, no, I mean, I think I think there's a comment here. What, having these guys play at the position that they played in college? What a concept! Like, yeah, that's exactly what it's crazy to think, right? But that's what the Bears threw out here for this first voluntary practice, and I think there was such a small sample size with Tevin Jenkins last season that it doesn't hurt to put him back there where he played in college at Oklahoma State. So I think this is a good move by the Bears. And like Eberflus was saying, this is fluid. I wonder, let's see where they're at tomorrow. I have a feeling that they're still going to be in the same exact spots that they were today. And so they can build off of that, because we've seen how often that the Bears just like to fluctuate their offensive linemen, whether it was James Daniels, Cody Whitehair, just switching every offseason. If they can have some continuity at the position that they're going to play at and stay there moving forward, I think that helps them in the long run. But yeah, we did see Sam Mustipher right guard. I don't know why, for some reason, I didn't even expect that. Like, I don't know. Like, I thought Lucas Patrick's there, Sam Mustipher's just out of the equation, but he's at right guard for now. We'll see how that all shakes up once the draft actually happens.
Well, the one thing about Mustipher, like, if what his biggest strength probably is understanding the playbook and knowing what to do, which is a huge part of football, an enormous part. It's the first part of football. Like, you can't do something right unless you know what you're supposed to be doing. And Sam Mustipher is a little bit undersized. He was at center, so he's definitely undersized at guard, but he is somebody you can rely on to at least know what he should be doing. So that makes you a pretty damn valuable backup center, because at any given moment, if your starter goes down, you at least know the guy coming in is going to get the snap count right, going to get the snap off, understand the protections, and you're going to be okay there. The problem is, with the way game day rosters are set up and who's active and who's not, you really need that guy to be able to play guard too. Like that backup has to be versatile, play center and guard. We don't really know at this point if Sam Mustipher can do that. So, look, I'll be shocked if Sam Mustipher is a starting right guard in week 1. I think that's a product of the fact that there's really only like 50 guys on the roster right now. Okay, yeah. So, while you have it, take advantage of the opportunity to see what he can do there. Granted, offensive line of all these positions with the way practices are, no contact, no pads, all like it's tough to evaluate these guys, but at least get him going through those motions, understanding what the assignments are at a different position, so that if you get to training camp and you want to see what he can do, and possibly be that center slash interior, backing up both of those spots, you're off to a start here with that. And I'm curious to see how he takes advantage of that. But yeah, I think at this point, like if he couldn't be your starting center and you went out and replaced him, he shouldn't really be your starting right guard. I think he has a chance to be a valuable backup though at those spots.
Yeah, I think a backup is where Sam Mustipher should have been, to be completely honest, before he was kind of thrust into the starting role a couple seasons ago. But if you have that knowledge, it's like that's like you said, Adam, that is valuable. And maybe that's where Sam Mustipher kind of shows his worth to this new regime, this new head coach, and obviously Luke Getsy as a new offensive coordinator. But yeah, as long as Sam Mustipher can show that and you can feel comfortable with him, he has a spot as a backup, but I agree that you still need to put your best five out there. And today, like Sam Mustipher was part of the best five because of, again, the numbers not being where the Bears are going to end up being, come the season. But once that happens, I think there will be somebody else playing the right guard position.
I gotta say, Larry Borom at left and Tevin at right, like that made me want to like get to late July and see the first padded practice. Like let's go. Let's see what these guys can actually do when they can hit somebody. And then we're just not going to see that over these next, couple months here with the offseason program. But I was like out there today and I'm like, oh, I just want to see what he's really doing at left tackle. They didn't even have a defense going today, right? So, but it was, the word is encouraging. I obviously like when the front office / coaching staff is seeing what everybody else is seeing for the most part. And I thought there were times early on in the Ryan Pace era where like a lot of that was happening. And then especially last year, it's just like, what?
No, I get you.
Why is Justin Fields not getting first team reps again? Like this is, yeah.
I was almost just encouraged to see him do bootlegs. Like, is that, I don't know if that's stupid so low, but it's like, oh, they handed the ball off and the drill didn't end. He did a bootleg afterwards and threw the ball again. And it was, it was Luke Getsy who was running after Fields when he was throwing. I'm like, I like this already. Like, this could work because now we're putting Fields in a position that, hey, will capitalize on his strengths. But yeah, maybe I set the bar really low there, but I was like, I like that.
Well, let's talk about briefly though how this could all be impacted by the draft though, because I still do think the Bears are in a situation where since they have so many guys who are unproven, you could still go out and a little bit teaser here because later when we do our daily draft profiles, our pickup prospects, I do have a offensive tackle to talk about. So we'll get there a little bit later on in the show. But if you were to draft somebody who profiles as a potential left tackle, then I can still see Borom moving to guard. Like I truly do think that they're going to let this play out, or do you kick Tevin Jenkins inside? Or maybe they like this combination and they pick a guard. The point is, I think they can. There's enough flexibility here that in the second round, if they go offensive line, they truly can stick to the best position between, like, is this guy, man, we got this guy, we think he's the best guard in the draft, right? And he's here and he's available. Let's just plug him in at right guard. We think he's a plug and play starter, and you're more likely to find a plug and play starter at guard than you are tackle. The problem, I think, is if you draft somebody who really profiles as a right tackle, I almost feel like then you got to move Jenkins inside and hope Larry Borom works out at left tackle. Like it kind of complicates things, but I do think the Bears can just draft the best of those two positions and let it sort itself out in training camp.
And that would be the best position for the Bears to be in if they figure that's what they can go into the draft with that mindset. Just best player available, and if that happens to be someone that plays on the inside, so be it. But yeah, I agree with you. Like if that scenario works out where you can't have Borom as your left tackle, Tevin Jenkins as your right tackle, and then you look at your board like, okay, we don't have to be slotted to this specific position because we don't feel comfortable there. We can just take whoever is best available to make our best five on the line now. But Yeah, I think, if the Bears feel that way, that's what's best for the Bears moving forward. And we'll actually see if that plays out once, the draft is here just next week.
Almost here. Almost here. And we do have some more prospects to break down coming up. But first, the best way to support us at CHGO right now is to download the PointsBet app. Use code CHGO when you sign up. If you do that right now, you'll get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. But that's not it. If you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content. You'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. So it's $2,000 in free bets, a free CHGO membership, and a free t-shirt from the CHGO locker, all for making more than a $50 first-time deposit at PointsBet. If you have any questions, you can email pointsbet@allchgo.com. We will help you out. Your home for live in-play betting just got even better because now there's the live NBA same-game parlay. Combine your favorite bets anytime during the game. Boost those live bets. So watch live, parlay live, boost live with PointsBet. Now online signup is available in Illinois. Download the PointsBet app right now. Register your account from start to finish, all from your phone. What are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700.
Chicago sports fans, if you aren't a member of our CHGO family, what are you waiting for? Members will have access to all of our premium content from all of our great writers. I just wrote about what Justin Fields kind of said today and how that factors into what the Bears are going to do moving forward. So you can go check that out on allchgo.com. And you also get a free t-shirt of your choice when you become a member. And you get access to the members-only Discord, the CHGO Lounge. And of course, we have podcasts and live shows on every team, every day. And, sometimes we switch it up. But if you're notified, guess what? You'll know exactly when we're going live, breaking down everything that's going on with the Bears. So come join this amazing family that is constantly growing here at CHGO.
We also owe you our pick of the week for PointsBet. I think I'm going to go NBA here this week.
Okay.
I have to say, we gave you a good one last week. We just gave you the wrong day.
That's what it ended up being. Tim Anderson's reliable. Tim Anderson is a reliable guy. I just said the wrong day.
I am loving this Timberwolves Grizzlies series though. Okay. And tonight the T-Wolves are 6.5 point underdog. And I just think I like the T-Wolves. I think it's been an up and down series. I think I think the Grizzlies are probably the better team, but I think for the way the series looks to be, I think it's going to be a little bit closer tonight than that.
Yeah, as long as you're not I feel for our DNVR, squad over there because Golden State, oh man, they put a number on them yesterday. It was tough to watch.
Yeah, it definitely was. All right, and we want to ask you guys too, if you like the podcast, everything we're doing here, rate and review it, please. Those reviews help us. If you can find the time, put a little review in there, rate it. That helps us out. So we appreciate you guys, all the loyal listeners, viewers who have been here every single day. Thank you for that. All right. There were some players who were not at Halas Hall today that we need to discuss and kind of how big of a deal this may or may not be. There were a couple of names that surprised me, especially on the defensive side. Now, let's knock out the one on offense. You already mentioned it. Nick Foles not there. Not surprising. I thought maybe there was a chance he would be just because he's Nick Foles, and it seems like for all the shit he gets and situations he ends up in, he's a really good team player. But I guess when the GM tells the media he's trying to trade you, why show up to voluntary minicamp? It tells us a lot, I think, about what his future is with the Bears this year.
No, absolutely. When I, didn't see number 9 out there, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Alex Shapiro and I were talking like, who's not going to be here as we were walking to field number 3. We're like, and none of us, we didn't say Nick Foles. And then when we didn't, find him on our list, they were like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, given that information is already out there, it's all right, Nick Foles, wherever you're at, probably somewhere warmer, you can stay there.
Yeah, good for him. the names that were a little bit more surprising, and again, this is a little bit tough for us because we don't know the circumstances. The coaches never want to go into it this because it's technically voluntary. So if they make it sound like a guy hasn't been participating, it comes off like it's a bad thing. So they never want to address it. But in some cases, it is a bad thing. So Eddie Jackson, not there today. Jalen Johnson, not there today. That one surprised me. Robert Quinn, not there today. Those were some big names on defense. And Mario Edwards, not there today.
Yeah, that's 3 starters, Adam. That's 3 starters there. Robert Quinn, Jalen Johnson, Eddie Jackson, then Mario Edwards being the rotational player. Well, Eberflus said he's not concerned about Jackson not being there. That's who he was asked about today. But, I was thinking, like, with this being a new, obviously a new defense going from 3-4 to 4-3, new coaching staff, you just felt like maybe that those starters would be there, but it is voluntary. And that's the thing. Can we really dog these guys for, not being there? We don't know the explanation why they're not there.
Right. It is Jalen Johnson's birthday today.
There we go. So that's a good excuse in itself.
I go to work on my birthday, but hey, I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to make a big deal out of that one. Frankly, that only reason why that surprised me is just because he's a guy who seems like he's always there working. The Eddie Jackson thing is interesting because, again, he may have just had a good excuse and not been there today. And you know what? We'll talk about this again tomorrow because maybe he's there tomorrow for all we know. But I think we're also kind of stuck here in this sort of hypothetical spot where I think we do at least need to address the possibility if he's not there and hasn't been there. Because remember, a big chunk of the defense didn't show up last year. That's why, to me, this is why this matters. I'm sure some people are going to be like, oh, this is overblown. It's voluntary. They don't need to be there. That's all true. Last year, a lot of the defense didn't show up until they absolutely had to. And I thought it clearly hurt them. When you got multiple blown coverages in your first game on Sunday Night Football and you're not touching players down on the ground. So not going to make a huge deal out of it today. I do find it interesting that Eddie Jackson's one of those players on that list because for somebody that has a lot to prove and is switching into a defense, I think it help them. Remember, this is a new defense. They need to learn it. They need to go through his reps. I thought that was at least very notable.
Yeah, so I was kind of just looking at him real quickly because the Bears have been there, prior to this mini camp, just kind of getting some, working on like with the strength coach and stuff like that. And Eddie Jackson is in those photos. Like I do see Eddie Jackson here, so he was there at that portion. Whether that was a week or 2 weeks ago, and then again, he's not here today. We'll see again. We'll be there. We'll be at Halas Hall tomorrow. Maybe that changes, but. Yeah, it's just with a guy that has been on the downward trend from that 2018 season and has not, there's a mixed feeling about him with the fan base. Like I think fans would wish that he would have been there today, but we'll see what ends up happening there.
No, but that's at least notable that, you did some detective work there. He's been there. It's not like he's holding out or anything then in that type of situation. So that's noticeable. And then there's like Robert Quinn. Like Robert Quinn to me could show up for the first game, put his hand down on the dirt, go after the quarterback. And I think he's proven enough that he works pretty hard. However he trains, that he can still play at a high enough level. I think there's a natural regression to expect this year just because of his age and sort of the up and down nature of how his career has been. But his position, put your hand down in the dirt, go get the quarterback. There's a little less nuance. It's more technique, fundamentals, one-on-one matchups than there is necessarily a huge defensive transition. It's part of the reason why Khalil Mack, not to take anything away from what he did because it was the most incredible defensive performance I've ever seen, but part of the reason why he got traded to the Bears and literally less than a week later, was dominating the Packers with no training camp. Those guys can do that. So Robert Quinn, not as notable to me. Interesting, but still, I just, out of these guys, I think Eddie Jackson's the name to watch. So, hey, maybe he'll be there tomorrow.
And actually, Adam, you mentioned, a good point here, because what Matt Eberflus also talked about today is that players don't have to think as much in this defense, and kind of to the point where like a Khalil Mack could show up and just go dominate. Like, he's not thinking, he's just playing. And so that was something that also, like, Travis Gibson spoke today, and quickly, like, that's what he also talked about. It's like, yeah, with what the coach are trying to implement here is like, I could just go out there and play ball and not have to worry about dropping back into coverage. And that's why he said him transitioning from a 3-4 back to a 4-3, which he did in college. He doesn't feel like it's going to be that big of a jump, because again, that's what he was used to doing. And if he doesn't have to focus on the motion in the backfield as much, just go get the quarterback. So, that's also, I guess, something that, again, for Robert Quinn, as old as he is and how productive he was last season, I'm okay that Robert Quinn wasn't there the first day of voluntary minicamp.
Yeah. And again, some of this is just us reporting you what's going on and the players who were not there. Again, Mario Edwards Jr. was on that list too. There were a couple guys that walked out there late, but
Jesper Horsted was one of them,
yeah,
and Atachu were the two players that's
and Atachu's obviously coming off an injury, so not surprising that you wouldn't have him going through a full practice at this point. So not a big deal. We'll continue to monitor that, and yeah, Nick Foles though.
Nick Foles, not that.
I don't think you can trade him right now.
Yeah.
Which almost surprises me, because I don't know, somebody who's proven himself as a good backup quarterback. The contract's not terrible anymore. But then again, if the Bears were to just release him, the contract's even better probably. So I don't know. I can't figure out the quarterback market anymore. Multiple picks going for Carson Wentz. Nobody wants Baker Mayfield. I don't understand it anymore. One. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And, maybe you hold on to a guy because you don't know what happens in these training camps. Sometimes players do go down, right? And so if that were to happen somewhere, you do have Nick Foles. Like, maybe that's where it ends up going for Nick Foles in his career. But before we continue this conversation, Adam, I have to tell everybody and all of our listeners about PointsBet. If you enjoy CHGO, one way to help us to continue to grow is to download the PointsBet app and use code CHGO when you sign up. Not only are you going to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000, but if you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you will receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, and you'll even get a free shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker. If you have any questions, email pointsbet@allchgo.com and we'll help you out. And in case you missed it, online sign-up is available in Illinois. You'll be signing up with the fastest sportsbook, easier than ever, so you can start living your bet life in seconds. So what are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
Yeah, man, want to make sure you guys also know that we'll have some content going up at allchgo.com. Nick writing on some of the happenings at Halas Hall today. My 10 Bears things up and available. And we'll have more next Monday too. My Bears things column with some of all the observations from this week. Of course, shows coming every single day. Nice to have these practices to talk about, some things to break down, even though it is April. And all of our teams have podcasts and live shows every single day. The post-game shows are awesome. Now that baseball started, Bulls post-game shows, just straight fire. And we got that watch party Friday night at the Third Rail Tavern that we're all looking forward to. So this is what it's all about at CHGO, building this fan community, getting you guys all involved. And that's a great opportunity to come out and hang out with us Friday night with the Bulls watch party. And there's information on all this stuff at CHGO_sports_ all the teams, Bears. That's our Twitter account here from the Bears team, but we got you covered at the same spot for Bulls, Sox, Cubs, Hawks, all there for you. And when you get that premium written content for members only at allchgo.com, get that dope merchandise. Got to start rocking that, I guess, out at the practice field soon. And you get a free shirt when you become a member. That members only Discord in the CHGO Lounge too, where we interact with you in off hours when things pop up. And probably got some discussion we should have on there today after this first practiced for us to watch. So all that stuff going on at CHGO. We appreciate all the support. And again, if you can rate and review the podcast, we appreciate you doing that as well. All right. Still NFL draft season. I teased earlier that there was a offensive tackle I wanted to talk about, and I decided that before we went out there today and saw what the offensive tackle combination was with Larry Borum and Tevin Jenkins. But I guess since I did a tackle, I'll start today, and going with a prospect from Minnesota, Daniel Fa'alele. Huge dude. 6'8", 384 pounds. I don't know if any of you guys have had a chance to watch this guy when he was in the Big Ten, but he just pops out on the television screen at left tackle because of how big he is. Bench press 24, which is plenty good enough. Huge, long frame, strong with powerful hands. This guy's story is incredible, Nick, because he was an Australian rugby player. Like, he grew up in Australia and he transferred to IMG Academy in Florida, like as a junior, sat out to kind of learn the game, and then went ahead and played as a senior, gets all these offers, and all the places he could have gone, he goes to Minnesota, which is interesting.
So crazy. Yeah.
So,
and
anyway.
Adam, I got to see him at the Senior Bowl. The man is just so much bigger than everybody. It's so noticeable. And, for him to be able to move the way he does at the size that he is, it's like, man, that's just a rare talent. If he gets in the right team, if it is the Bears, if you can coach him up, like, you have a literal wall to block it for you. And that's always good to have.
And I think I misspoke in there. I apologize, because he played on the right side in Minnesota. And we're getting a lot of comments already coming in, like he's not a scheme fit. I don't know how you know that yet. Like, this guy has, just because he's big, like if you watch when he gets his pass sets, like the amount of distance you actually have to cover as an edge rusher to get around him, it's like you're buying yourself time just with how big and long he is. Now, there's some weaknesses, I think, at times to some movements inside on him, which is understandable. And the question, I think, is because he's so big, can he get out to the outside in the outside zone? He's already a freak athlete. And like, again, he's so raw still and hasn't played a lot. He sat out all of 2020 because of COVID. I don't think you can necessarily limit him to any schemes yet. I don't think we necessarily know. I think he's just kind of a big dude who can work. But anyway, we're just trying to share prospects with you every single day, and that's one that I watched in the Big Ten that I at least wanted to share with you.
I like the comment. That's a mountain on wheels. But I'll get to my prospect here. Sticking with the offense, and I'm going with a wide receiver this time. Danny Gray out of SMU. And as you can see, like, if you're watching this, speed is one of this guy's strengths. Ran a 4.33 at the combine, has the ability to break a corner's cushion. And with that speed, he could turn guys around. And when he runs these double moves, like, you constantly see these cornerbacks looking like, where's Danny Gray? Oh, he's behind me. Okay, I should probably try to go make up the tackle because, he just broke our coverage. But he also tracks the ball really well. And I thought about Justin Fields and a guy like this. And, Justin Fields talked about Chris Olave today, and he was one of the best deep ball trackers that he's ever played with. Won't say Danny Gray's to that level, but he's really good at it. And he just has production all over the field. He caught passes on all three levels, short, intermediate, and deep. So it's a guy that's he has that versatility there. The one issue that, I do have with like a Danny Gray, it's very similar like a Darnell Mooney, is kind of like his size at 5'11", 186. How is he going to hold up in the NFL? And actually, when I was watching Darnell Mooney today at practice, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see like the similar body types here with a Danny Gray. But, you want to see if he can compete not only in blocking, but just when he takes those hits. But this is a guy that started at the JUCO level and eventually made his way to SMU and caught 49 passes for 803 yards, 9 touchdowns. So productive, and he's predicted to go in that 4th round. The Bears don't have a 4th round draft pick, but you never know how it's going to all work out. Maybe he ends up in the 5th round. Who knows? But
or the Bears make a couple trades and end up with a 4th round.
Exactly. So the Bears could be in a position to take a guy like this. Maybe he's gone by then, but like Adam said, we're here to kind of share some of these prospects. So if they do land on the Bears, like I would listen to that guy on the CHGO Bears podcast. I know what he's about. So that's what I'm bringing to the table here. Danny Gray, SMU wide receiver.
And a couple other observations from today to round out the show. One is with the wide receivers.
Yeah.
Byron Pringle's bigger than I thought he was. That was one of the observations I had today. Equimanius St. Brown is, we've seen him a lot in the NFC North, so that wasn't nothing surprising there. But they had JoJo Natson out there today as a tryout player. He's little, but they had a few guys in there with some return experience, which I found interesting. The other one was Blazing Game, the fullback. That dude's tall for a fullback. And I looked at like when he was listed, he was listed at 6 feet. I'm like, I don't know, man. He looks like Matt Forte out there, like kind of tall and lean. He didn't look like a fullback to me.
No, and when he was doing the blocking drills, who was it? David Walker, right? The Bears running backs coach. Like the way he was popping that bag, he was just moving back like, oh, okay. And yeah, he's got some size and just some punch overall. So I was like making note, like, yeah, he's gonna tear up the bag if he keeps doing this drill anymore. But just to kind of go back to the wide receivers though, Adam, like there were some guys that I think were a little bigger in terms of physical appearance, but I just like, man, that room just needs more guys, like actual like playmaker guys. And I think, this draft next week, hopefully they can add to that room, because I was watching Darnell Mooney. He kind of went off to the side by himself and was the only one working with Tyke Tolbert just on some route run, just kind of some mechanic stuff. And he was the only one there for a little bit. But just overall, I just think the Bears need to add more to that room so that Justin Fields and his Bears coaching staff can feel truly confident in what they're throwing out there for Luke Getsy and Fields.
Yeah. I mean, and still, you just look at the roster and how just based on numbers, like regardless of what the depth chart looks like, they just have so many spots to fill still. So yeah, interesting. Again, I for offense that was playing against air for the most part, and a couple of random players and coaches in a half scout team, I thought the passing game looked smooth. There was a couple instances where I think one of the first team snaps they had together, it looked like the run, either Fields turned to the wrong side or the running back went to the wrong side. Stuff like that's going to happen. But I actually thought for the most part, like, things were relatively smooth. I'm sure they weren't doing a ton today. Like they're installing things. So everything they put in the meetings, it's probably the most basic stuff at this point. But all right, like it wasn't. I've certainly seen plenty of disastrous Bears practices, even against air. It was a decent start, I thought.
There weren't any fumbled snaps, and that's a new quarterback in the center with Lucas Patrick, right? So there weren't any of those things happening. It didn't seem like there were any offside or false starts from either line there. So yeah, like there are some positives that you could take away just from this practice that was on air. And again, no defense. There were coaches out there for Justin Fields and the offense to go against, but you have to start the basics. And the Bears were kind of starting there, and day one, they look good. The Bears won. The Bears win.
Want to take one quick question from Cliff before we got out of here. He said, would it bother you guys if the Bears end up with a tackle, guard, and a 3 technique with those 3 picks on day 2? No. We've kind of had this discussion before, like if they go 2 defensive players in the second round. I realize they need wide receivers. They also need offensive linemen. They also need 3 technique. So, like, however they prioritize those, if they end up with 2 offensive linemen, I'm not complaining. They need to protect Justin Fields. They need to upgrade the line, and you're greatly increasing your chances that you're adding a starter then on the offensive line if you address both positions, because ideally you're going to get at least one of the 2 of them right, if not both. And 3 technique is a need we've talked about that they could easily go with. So I know people would definitely be upset at that point that they didn't draft a wide receiver. But of all those positions, wide receiver is the one that you, especially if you could trade back at some point on day 2 and add a 4th round pick. Like you just brought up a 4th round wide receiver. There are other wide receivers that I think in other years they're going to be available on day 3 when they probably would be gone in day 2 in most drafts. But because of COVID and a lot of guys staying in school, the talent pool is richer, and we've seen it definitely a wide receiver. So that would not bother me at all.
No, it wouldn't. And I actually had a article on allchgo.com looking at some of the second round wide receivers that have been drafted in the past 5 seasons. It's hit or miss, Adam. Like, are you going to get a DK Metcalf, or are you going to get, like a Juju Smith-Schuster is also a second round draft pick, but it's just varying from where you can get in that second round. And like we've seen on this own roster, Darnell Mooney's a 5th rounder. So maybe the Bears wait until then and find somebody that can immediately contribute. But if that were to be the case, the Bears are really setting up both their lines to be what they want it to be. And that was an emphasis really from Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus, what they've kind of talked about already.
All right, last thing, I just kind of want to have some fun with. One thing I saw from Justin Fields today, one of the quotes, I meant to get it in earlier in the show, but we can sneak it in here at the end. But Justin Fields was asked today about what film he's watched with Luke Getsy from last year. And I don't know if we have the quote ready here to bring up, but his answer is basically, here it is. We haven't really watched too much tape on last season. We've been trying to install this new offense and try to get going on these new concepts. So
probably for the best.
Yeah, I don't blame him. I mean, like, that was a lot. We keep talking about it being a throwaway year. It kind of feels that way. So maybe some of the mechanical differences that they're trying to emphasize, hey, this is what you're doing last year, but like going into maybe some of that decision making and things like that, I don't know what you're really going to learn from that. So I thought that was an interesting quote to bring out here late in the show. So,
I don't blame Fields though.
Yeah, I don't either. Well, good to have football back today, even in shorts, even in cold weather shorts situation. Dress a little bit warmer tomorrow. All right.
Yep. Got it.
We put on an extra layer. I was mad because I actually brought an extra layer that I left in my backpack back in the media room, and I was regretting it the whole time. But we'll be back out there tomorrow. A couple more players will talk. Another practice. They are expected to do more 7-on-7 and some team drills tomorrow, so maybe we'll get an idea of what Justin Fields looks like against some of the defense. Maybe some of those missing defensive backs will be there tomorrow. We'll find out. Either way, follow us on Twitter for all the updates during the day. Nick is at Nicholas Moriano. I'm at Adam Hogue. We'll have more on at CHGO Sports, at CHGO_Bears, all of those places. Make sure you're following us. And we'll be right back here 5 o'clock tomorrow for another recap as we recap day 2 of Bears minicamp right here on the CHGO Bears podcast. Talk to you tomorrow.